there anyone who would like to enter the call?
Hare Krishna, Bhargavi Mataji, Dandot Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. This is Shyama Gauri from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavad Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Lavanya from Dallas.
Hare Krishna, Lavanya Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Oh, Mataji, go ahead, please.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Sita Preethi from India.
Hare Krishna, Sita Preethi Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call.
Hare Krishna, Bhargavi Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Vrinda from Baltimore.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is Radha Damodar Das and Atmamaya from Austin, Texas. Please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to all the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radha Damodar Prabhuji and Atmamaya Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Prabhuji and Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhargavi Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas. This is Preethi Vilasini from Chicago. Thank you so much, Mataji, for your warm welcome.
Hare Krishna, Preethi Vilasini Mataji, Dandavas Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining Bhakti Sangha conference call and giving your valuable association through your classes. We are really fortunate to hear from you regularly, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhargavi Mataji.
Okay, I welcome all of you once again. Thank you everyone for joining today's Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today we are really fortunate to have Preethi Vilasini Mataji to have to give a Srimad Bhagavatam class. Hare Krishna Mataji, you can please take over the class, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhargavi Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Shama Gauri Mataji. So we'll start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayet. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhakti. Hare Krishna. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, verse number 62 onwards. 4.29.62 Bhagavatam. Mamaite manasa yat yat asau aham iti bruvan griniyat tat puman radham karmayena punarbhavaha. Synonyms: mama, mine, ete, all these, manasa, by the mind, yat yat, whatever, asau, that, aham, I am, iti, thus, bruvan, accepting, griniyat, takes with him, tat, that, puman, the living entity, radham, perfected, karma, work, yena, by which, punaha, again, bhavaha, existence. Translation. The living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this, I am that. My duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. These are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoctions. Thus, he gets another body. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki Jai. As long as one is absorbed in the bodily conception, his activities are performed on that platform. This is not very difficult to understand. In the world, we see that every nation is trying to supersede every other nation, and that every man is trying to advance beyond his fellow man. All these activities are going on under the name of advancement of civilization. There are many plans for making the body comfortable, and these plans are carried in the subtle body after the destruction of the gross body. It is not a fact that after the gross body is destroyed, the living entity is finished. Although many great philosophers and teachers in this world are under the impression that after the body is finished, everything is finished, this is not a fact. Narada Muni says in this verse that at death, one takes his plans with him, grihniyat. To execute these plans, he gets another body. This is called punarbhavaha. When the gross body is finished, all the plans of the living entity are taken by the mind, and by the grace of the Lord, the living entity gets a chance to give these plans shape in the next life. This is known as the law of karma. As long as the mind is absorbed in the laws of karma, a certain type of body must be accepted in the next life. Karma is the aggregate of fruitive activities conducted to make this body comfortable or uncomfortable. We have actually seen that when one man was about to die, he requested his physician to give him a chance to live 4 more years so that he could finish his plans. This means that while dying, he was thinking of his plans. After his body was destroyed, he doubtlessly carried his plans with him by means of the subtle body composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. Thus, he would get another chance by the grace of the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul who is always within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. In the next birth, one acquires remembrance from the Super Soul and begins to execute the plans begun in the previous life. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in another verse. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on as on a machine made of material energy. 1861. Situated on the vehicle given by material nature and reminded by the super soul within the heart, the living entity struggles all over the universe to fulfill his plans, thinking, I am Brahmana, I am Kshatriya, I am American, I am Indian, and so on. All these designations are of the same essence. There is no point in becoming a Brahmana in preference to an American or becoming an American in preference to a Negro. After all, these are all bodily conceptions under the modes of material nature. Hare Krishna. Quite an interesting verse. We'll do the pranam mantras and we can start. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtham Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvichesha Shunyavadi Paschayate Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation again. The living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this, I am that. My duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. These are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoctions. Thus, he gets another body. Hare Krishna. So this chapter is actually titled The Talks Between Narada and Prachina Barhi. And we all know the background of the story that Narada Muni spoke an allegory of Puranjana to King Prachina Barhi. And when Prachina Barhi told Narada that he couldn't really understand the meaning of this allegory, at that time Narada, he began to describe the meaning of this allegory. The reason Puranjana couldn't understand the meaning of the sun allegory is because he says that he was very attached to material activities and it was hard for him to really understand the purport of Narada's words. So Narada began to decode his own allegory. And after explaining what that allegory meant, Narada Muni, he spoke about material existence, the problem in material existence, how the spirit soul is actually qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, and he's a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Yet, however, he forgets this Lord when he comes under the influence of the modes of material nature within this universe, and he gets attached to things of this world and he starts wandering from one life to another. So, Narada also made a very important point that just by material means, you cannot get rid of this covering, material coverings that we have acquired, but it is possible only by spiritual means. And what is the spiritual means? Narada Muni, he tells only by bhakti will you be able to conquer this material coverings and you will be able to get out of this material world. So he said bhakti is the only solution and surrender to Krishna is the only means. So after he spoke all this, Narada, he has ended the sacrifices of King Parachinhabari, which he had been doing for so many years. And he also gives the analogy of a deer. So that was also covered in the previous verses. Then finally, Prachina Barhi, he begins to ask further questions to Narada Muni about the transfer of karma to next life and the proof of transmigration and how karma flows from one birth to another and so on. So at that time, when Prachina Barhi asked these questions to Narada Muni, at that time Narada began to explain the role of the mind in the soul's transmigration. How the mind is extremely important. It plays a pivotal role when the soul is transmigrating from one body to the other. And we saw in the previous verse, that was verse number 61, he gave the example of a dream. So he said, just like how in a dream, a person thinks that he has taken the body of a dog or a god, and just in his dream, he has actually taken a different body. So, like that, similarly, through his subtle body, he has appeared to have taken up another body in his dream. So, that is what is happening in a dream. Similarly, at the time of death, one gives up the gross body, and at the same time, the subtle body enters another gross body and he begins to experience the result of his previous actions, which he has done in his past life. So that was our discussion on verse 61, and we saw a thorough presentation on how the subtle body works. So we are all good with that so far. This is a summary of what has happened so far in this chapter. And this is how the discussion about the subtle body, gross body, and the mind has actually fallen in this chapter. So that was our previous verse. Previous verse, we saw the workings of the subtle body, how the mind is very important, And we also compared it with a situation in the dream. So basically what's happening, the subtle body is actually transferring on, taking up another gross body. At the same time, whatever actions of the past life we have done, we experience the results of those actions in the new body that we have taken up, and it is only the subtle body that has actually moved on. So the same subtle body is actually moving on. That is what we have seen in our previous verse. Now this is verse number 62. And this verse specifically explains the reasons for next life. Why do we have to take up another life? What is it that we're doing now that we have to take up another life? Okay, so that is what is being described here. So the translation itself, just in simple terms, it means that while identifying with this gross body, a jiva begins to perform an action. First of all, he's identifying with the body. He in terms of aham mameti, I, me, myself, my body. So in terms of bodily identification, he begins to perform actions. Then he receives the results of those action in the subtle body, and by that action performed with a certain identity, he takes birth in another gross body while the subtle body is moving on to the next gross body. Okay, so that is what this verse is pretty much trying to tell us. Now, let's try to understand Srila Prabhupada's purport in great detail. Prabhupada has given a very, very beautiful purport. So he begins off the purport with the situation of all of us in this material world, what we are exactly trying to do here, how the bodily identification is so deeply rooted, and it's very, very hard to get over this bodily identification. So in this material world, we are under different kinds of pressure, identity pressure, because we are all heavily ingrained in this bodily conception of life. Right from childhood, we are told we must be a success, we must be the best in everything, we have to win over everyone, we should be best in our grades, we should be best in school. And then it doesn't stop with school, it continues on with family relationships. So there is so much comparison. Who's better? Is your cousin better? At least in India, it's very rampant. Who's better? Who's getting the best grades? And there is so much comparison, even within family. And then school life we see is full of competition, family life is full of competition, and it doesn't stop there. Even when you go for social gatherings is all about showing off who is better, who's got the best clothes, who's got the best jewels, whose kids are doing the best, whose kids are able to do this, do that. So this goes on and on and on. My house, my family, my property, all this. It's all about how materially you're successful. That's how you're judged by everyone's eyes. And this judgment becomes so important to all of us. And we think that is all. That is all is most important for us. How we portray to the world is all in all. So this is endless. This list is endless. So therefore, Prabhupada, he comments that it starts off like this, and then it extends to nation as well, he says. He says even great nations, they compete with each other. They are always in competition in every sphere of life. They compete in the field of medicine, science, defense, and so many other fields. And nations compete, as we all know, in different defense mechanisms, which is extremely important to them. They come up with the latest missiles to show their strength, nuclear weapons, bio warfare, and the reason why they're doing all this is to just mainly show their power. Yes, defense mechanisms are extremely important for a country, no doubt, but then it becomes more of a power comparison, who is better. And this goes on everywhere, even in the field of medicine, we see it happening very frequently. We see this happening in, think about everything, every other field, a nation wants to show its power, a nation continues to do this. And right from Srila Prabhupada's time, we have heard the competition between Russia and US for the moon landings. So it was a time when Prabhupada witnessed this, and he was heavily commenting on these issues. Everyone was competing, who's going to go first to moon, who's going to go first to space. So, and he also comments about the United Nations that is meant for peace formula. Even there also, everyone is simply barking, my nation, my country is this, my nation is that. And even if you go to some other country, the visa officials ask you, why are you in my country? So like this, this identity with one's body, one's family, one's possessions and one's nation goes on, and we think that is what is most important to us. And all of this is based on the concept of aham mameti, me and mine. And in this world, if you're simply satisfied with with who you are, and you're a simple person, if you're a simple devotee, then you are judged to be someone like Jada. I mean, people look at you as being extremely weird. You're seen as a person with no capability. So that is how bodily identification is so rampant in this world. And we have Narada Muni coming here and reminding us that at the time of death, what we are going to do, we are going to carry out all our plans with our subtle body, and we are going to execute them in our next life. So, this planning is going to continue. This impression of our different desires and activities that we are having now is going to be stored in our subtle body. And as we move on to another gross body, we are going to carry these impressions, and we will fulfill our desires in the next body if it is not fulfilled now. So, just like how fermentation takes place if there is still water in a lake, in a dirty pond, okay? If there is still water, what happens is fermentation takes place in the lower layers of water, and you cannot visibly see it on top. But then occasionally you will see a few bubbles coming out, occasionally, because of the fermentation. It just surfaces up. So, like that, this analogy actually is given in a couple of verses later. Bhagavatam gives this analogy. So, like this, the impressions that we have been carrying on from one birth to the other, it will suddenly surface at different points in time in this life, because it is the same subtle body that is moving on. So those impressions are all stored, and that's the reason everyone has a particular nature. We have been carrying on these impressions for several births, and in this birth, from time to time, those impressions will surface. Okay? So, therefore, Narada Muni, he warns us that we should be very, very careful about our desires and our plans, because unfulfilled plans, unfulfilled ideas, all these will surface in the next life, and it will spoil the next life also. And there are so many stories in scripture that talk about this and make us understand actually that this is very, very true. It just goes on from one birth to another, and it is an endless loop if we do not correct ourselves through the process of devotional service. So, one such very interesting story is that from the Mahabharata, we have the story of Amba. Amba, who became Shikhandi and fought in the Mahabharata war. So it's a very famous story. Shikhandi, she participated, she or he, actually he at this point in time, participated in the Mahabharata war and was the cause of Bhishma's death. Of course, Arjuna shot the arrows, and Bhishma had this boon of dying at his time and at his will. But however, it was Amba, or Shikhandi, to be specific, who was the reason for Bhishma's death. So, who was this Shikhandi? Shikhandi in the previous life was Amba, and Amba was the eldest daughter of the king of Kashi, and she had two sisters, Ambika and Ambalika. Now, it so happened that once Bhishma, when the three girls of Kashi were of a marriageable age, at that time Bhishma went to their Swayamvara, and forcefully he took these three girls, took them away from the Swayamvar ceremony, and presented them in marriage to Vichitravirya, who was the crown prince of Hastinapur. So he did this by force. But however, Vichitravirya, he ended up marrying only two sisters who were Ambika and Ambalika, and he did not marry Amba, who's the eldest, because Amba was in love with a king by the name Shalva. Now, the situation at this point in time was that Amba was forcibly kidnapped or forcibly taken away from her Swayamvar ceremony. In that Swayamvar ceremony, she had a plan of actually putting the garland around Shalva and marrying him because she was in love with him. But then now she was forcibly taken away. And when she went there, she expressed her heart to Bhishma, and she told Bhishma, I cannot marry Vichitravirya because I'm already in love with Shalva. So Bhishma, being a correct Kshatriya, what he did was He told Amba, it's okay, you can now go back to Shalva and we'll just get your sisters, Ambika and Ambalika, married to Vichitravirya, who was the crown prince of Hastinapur. So now Amba, she was left and she went to Shalva because she wanted to marry Shalva. Now Shalva, when Amba went to Shalva, Shalva rejected her. The problem at this time was Shalva was actually defeated by Bhishma. See, when Bhishma was taking away these three girls, many of the princes, they came to fight with Bhishma. So at that time, Bhishma, he very easily defeated all of them, including Shalva. So Shalva was heavily humiliated and defeated by Bhishma. So therefore, when Amba came to him, he said, no, I can't accept you because you have already been taken away by another warrior. You've been taken away by Bhishma to be presented to Vichitravirya. So how can I accept you? I will not accept you. So like this, Amba, she pleaded many kings, but nobody was ready to marry her because they were all scared of Bhishma because of Bhishma's prowess. They said, no, we are all actually scared of Bhishma, so you just go with Vichitravirya. And then she went running back to Bhishma, and Bhishma wouldn't accept her, saying that, no, you have already given your heart to someone else, so you must leave. So like this, wherever she went, she was rejected by everyone, and she was enraged, she was humiliated, and she started developing a very strong hatred and a revengeful attitude towards Bhishma. So what she did was she went around pleading many kings to wage a war against Bhishma. And everyone, they were so scared of Bhishma that they would never do it. And finally, she went to Parashuram himself, who was the guru of Bhishma, who was the military guru of Bhishma. So when she went to Parashuram, Parashuram said, okay, I will help you because you're a helpless woman. I will definitely help you. And he started fighting with Bhishma. But then even Parashuram could not defeat Bhishma. He was so amazed at the fighting skills of Bhishma. And he told Amba, it's better she gives up this idea. So she was humiliated again and again. And what she did was, because of this intense hatred, she began to perform penance, very severe penances, so that she could please Lord Shiva. In some versions, it says Lord Kartikeya. But anyway, she wanted to please Lord Shiva so that she could avenge for her situation and she could take revenge on Bhishma. She did this for a long time. And finally, Lord Shiva gave her a darshan. And then she asked Lord Shiva, I want to take revenge on Bhishma. So just equip me in such a way that I will be able to defeat Bhishma. And Lord Shiva said, you don't have enough military training in this body. But however, when you take your next birth, you will definitely be the cause of killing Bhishma. However, Bhishma cannot be killed easily because he has a boon. But still, you will be the real cause of Bhishma's death. And later, what she did was she couldn't tolerate staying alive anymore. So she entered fire. She ended her life. But her subtle body, now here is the point. Her subtle body, it carried these impressions. And when she was born as Shikandini, as the daughter of Drupada Maharaj, that time she carried this mental impressions that she has to be the one who's going to kill Bhishma. So Shikandini carries these mental impressions. She's born as a girl, and Mahabharata describes later she has an opportunity to exchange her sex with a yaksha. She becomes a male, and the yaksha becomes a female. And because she's now a transformed male, she gets the necessary military training, and and actually in the Mahabharata war, it's Krishna's idea that Krishna tells Arjuna that the best way to actually lay down Bhishma, because Bhishma cannot be killed, but still he can be, lay down in a bed of arrows. So that was the plan. Krishna gave this plan. He told, bring Shikhandi in front of you. When Shikhandi stands in front of you, Bhishma will put all his weapons down. At that time, shoot arrows at Bhishma and make just put him down, with your arrows, and then he can be defeated. So therefore, Shikhandi comes in front of Bhishma. Bhishma sees this is Shikhandi, this is Amba, and he puts down his weapons, and then Bhishma is conquered. So this was Shikhandi's case, where the subtle body carrying these impressions of hate and revengeful attitude was actually manifesting in the next life as well. Now, there is another very famous personality. This is Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj, of course, the Bhagavatam gives such a beautiful, beautiful story of Dhruva Maharaj, very, very impressive child who was just about 5 years old, and he had so much determination, and the Supreme Lord was so pleased with him. Now, we all know the story of Dhruva Maharaj from the Bhagavatam, that he did have a desire to sit on his father's lap, Uttanapada, and when he saw his dear brother Uttama climbing up the lap of his father, so he also, like a little boy, he wanted to climb up his father's lap. And Suruchi stopped him, and then he was humiliated by the sharp words of Suruchi. And then his mother Suniti asked him to go and perform penances in the forest. And later he impressed the Supreme Lord, and the Lord came and gave him boons. Of course, there's so much in the Bhagavatam, such beautiful emotions of Dhruva Maharaj is described, how he felt so bad that even after seeing the Lord, I mean, he did have such a desire in his heart for something material, but after seeing the Lord, he understood that he was only looking after broken pieces of glass. So this is the story of Dhruva Maharaj we all know, of what had happened as he was born as the son of Uttanapada. Now, Dhruva Maharaj's previous life is described in the Vishnu Purana. Very, very short description. It says that this Dhruva Maharaj, in his previous life, he was a Brahmana. He was a Brahmana. And being a Brahmana, he did have an opportunity to become somewhat close to the king at that time, with a particular king. And he developed a very close friendship with this king. And because of this close association with the king, slowly he started developing a desire to get the same opulence as the king. And this desire started intensifying in his heart, and it was so heavily embedded in his mind and his subtle body that in his next life, as Dhruva Maharaj, when he started off, he had this deep desire for attaining wealth, for becoming the greatest king, for becoming greater than his forefathers, for having a kingdom greater than his grandfather and great grandfather. Where did that desire come from? That desire, as explained, came from his previous birth in the Vishnu Purana. So like this, the subtle body is extremely, actually, it's very interesting how the mind is so important. The mind can be the greatest friend and it can be the greatest enemy. And in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, these subtle impressions were carried on. And in the next life, it was also manifested in this way. And he had this intense desire, but however, by the mercy of a Vaishnava, like Narada Muni, his desires were purified and he took up devotional service perfectly. Okay, so in this way, we can see how material desires are deep rooted in the previous life. And because of failure in spiritual life, because of a previous desire, because of a previous situation, you take up the next life. But there also, the same desire carries on, and that desire itself can result in the same failure. Okay, you have a desire, it is impeding you from taking to spiritual life in one birth, because the subtle body has all these impressions. You're taking it on to the next body. There also the same desire is there, and it's obstructing you again and again, and it's becoming a big stumbling block in the path of devotion. But it is very scary actually. But however, there is a solution. There is a solution. And the solution, as all of us know, is to just take shelter of a devotee and practice devotional service, like how Dhruva Maharaj did. Okay. Now, another very, very important personality described in the Bhagavatam with an offensive mentality. This is very instructive. Once we read the story of Daksha, we all can understand how this actually works and how we can correct ourselves. Because everyone, at least I definitely have these impressions, and these impressions surface from time to time, and it's very hard to cope up with it. But when we read stories of great personalities, these personalities are not ordinary. We have nothing in front of them. When great personalities themselves struggled and they won over it by the process of devotional service, when we read stories of Dhruva Maharaj and others, we can understand. We see both positive examples and negative examples. When we see the negative examples, we can correct ourselves. When we see the positive examples, we can take inspiration and try to behave or improve ourselves just like them. So another story that is there in the Bhagavatam, which is extremely interesting, as I mentioned, is Daksha. Daksha had a very offensive mentality, and this is described both in Bhagavatam 4th canto and in 6th canto. Because according to the Bhagavatam, Daksha's two births are discussed. Okay, so first in the 4th canto, in the reign of Swayambhuva Manu. So we all know the story because currently we are doing the 4th canto, and in the beginning of the 4th canto, we have done Daksha's story in great detail. How Daksha was the father of Sati, and he was very offensive towards Lord Shiva. So that is the story mentioned in the 4th canto in Daksha's first birth. This is Canto 4, Chapter 2, and the chapter is titled Daksha Curses Lord Shiva. So that is the chapter we are going to look at in brief. Once the leaders of all the universes, they performed a great sacrifices, and when Daksha, who was one of the chief progenitors, entered the assembly, he was so effulgent that everybody stood up when he entered out of respect, except Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Now, Lord Brahma did not have to stand up because Brahma was the father of Daksha. So, but Lord Shiva was expected to stand up. Okay, but anyhow, as Daksha entered the assembly, everyone stood up except both of Brahma and Lord Shiva. Daksha went and offered his respects to Lord Brahma because Brahma was his father, but he was extremely angry with Lord Shiva because Lord Shiva, according to Daksha, was only his son-in-law. Okay, who was married to his daughter Sati. Now, why didn't Lord Shiva stand up? Bhagavatam explains that Lord Shiva was deep in meditation on the Supersoul, and when one is offering his respects to the Supersoul, automatically all living entities are satisfied. So there was no fault in Lord Shiva to stand up. Okay, and also Lord Shiva was born from the eyebrows of Brahma. So there is a different relationship also at this point. But anyway, Daksha got very offended and he began blaspheming Lord Shiva in so many verses. And he was criticizing him so badly, and he was insulting Lord Shiva, and he began to curse Lord Shiva. And after cursing Lord Shiva, the associates of Lord Shiva began counter cursing Daksha. And there was a lot of cursing and counter cursing, and there was big drama. And finally, that sacrifice was completed. So this was one episode that is described in chapter 2. In the very next chapter, another episode is described where Daksha, he decides to perform another sacrifice. Now, at this point in time, he has developed a lot of hate towards Lord Shiva. So he refuses to invite Lord Shiva. Now, Dakshayani or Sati Devi, who is actually the daughter of Daksha, at the same time the wife of Lord Shiva, she hears of this news. She sees the demigods flying in airplanes, and then she understands her father is doing a sacrifice. But neither she nor her husband is invited. So she feels very dejected, but still she wants to go because it's her father's house. Every girl will want to go to her father's house. So she also had this deep rooted desire, but Lord Shiva advised her. He told her it's not a good idea. Please don't do this. You will get insulted because of Daksha's hatred towards me. He's only going to insult you and me. There is no point going to the sacrifice. But as a little young girl, she felt that it is very important because she was missing her parents and she was thinking of her sisters and her mother. And she kind of got a little angry with Lord Shiva for forbidding her. And she rode on the bull carrier accompanied by Nandi and others. They all went to the sacrifice. Now, when she went to the sacrifice of Daksha, she was neither welcomed nor treated properly because she's the wife of Lord Shiva. Except her, it is described in Bhagavatam that except her sisters and her mother, nobody paid, even gave her any attention. She felt very humiliated, and there was no offerings made to Lord Shiva, and she felt very, very bad about it. And she started talking to Daksha, pointing out his defects. And finally, in anger, she gave up her life because her body was given by Daksha. Because Daksha is the father, she said, I don't want to have this body anymore. And she gave up her life in front of everyone. Now, when this news came that Dakshayani had given up her life, Lord Shiva became extremely upset. All of Lord Shiva's associates and followers, They went and they started fighting with Daksha and his followers, and finally Daksha's head was cut off. Now, in the previous chapter in 4.2 itself, Nandi had already cursed Daksha that very soon he will get a goat head. That came to effect. Daksha's head was cut off and his life was later revived, and a goat head was replaced on Daksha's head. So this was what he did in the Swayambhuva Manvantara. And when he did all this in the Swayambhuva Manvantara, so our focus should be on the subtle body, what is happening with him. So he's having this impression of offensive mentality towards a great personality like Lord Shiva. The anger you see was carrying on. It was not just in one sacrifice that Daksha showed this irritation and anger. He continued to show it. In the next sacrifice also, the same mentality was there. So like this, he just continued to have this mentality. Of course, it appears that he asked for forgiveness. He said, "Oh, Shiva, you're a great personality. Please forgive me." But still, that offensive mentality was not completely removed from his mind. It was there in the subtle body, and it was carried on to his next life. Now, what is the next life of Daksha? This is Daksha version 2. The same Daksha again reappeared in the Chakshusha Manvantara. So this is described in the 6th canto, when the creation of different species is described in the Bhagavatam. So Daksha, the same Daksha, he again is born as Daksha 2. Okay, he has the same name and he has the same role, which is he becomes a progenitor of different species. This happens in the Chakshush Manvantara. So he's born as the son of Prachetas and Marisha, who is the daughter of the trees. He's born as their son, and he's responsible for creating different species or different human forms and everybody. He's basically a progenitor. He offers the Hamsa Guhya prayers in the 6th canto, and then he begins to create. So when he creates, first he wants to have several sons so that they can populate the universe. So he creates, or rather he has these Haryashvas as his sons, over 10,000 sons, and they are all completely transformed by the effect of Narada Muni, who goes around delivering people. So Narada Muni, he transforms the Haryashvas and they become first-class devotees, and they refuse to get married and they do not do the job that their father wants them to do. So Haryashvas are all transformed and they are gone. They become brahmacharis and they are not getting married and they become great devotees. Next, he has another set of sons called as the Shavalashvas. Now these Shavalashvas, they also meet with Narada Muni, and their mind is completely transformed by Narada Muni. And Narada Muni encourages them to take up devotional service and perfect their life and tell them that this is all not needed. Don't worry about getting entangled in this world again and again. Perform devotional service and perfect your life and go back to Godhead. So like this, 2 sets of sons. I mean, it was a lot of effort on Daksha's part, but 2 sets of sons were all gone. And at this time, Daksha, his offensive mentality surfaces. So subtle body, it's carrying the offensive mentality. And at this time, he curses Narada Muni. So it's a very famous curse. Everyone knows this curse, that Narada Muni was cursed to become a traveling sannyasi, Parivrajakacharya. So he goes everywhere traveling, which is a blessing in disguise. But anyhow, Daksha curses him. And there, the commentators, our acharyas, they comment that this was because of the offensive mentality that Daksha was carrying from one birth to the other. Especially, this mentality was so deep-rooted and it had surfaced at this point in time because he had offended a very great personality like Lord Shiva. This is the effect of having such a mentality. When we have these mentality, especially towards great Vaishnavas, it becomes very hard for us to wash it out. Until we really repent enough for it and we serve that person, it becomes extremely hard. So this offensive mentality was carried on, and then he ended up cursing even Narada Muni. So this is the power of the remnants of the offense to Lord Shiva. That's how our commentators, our Purvacharyas, all of them, they write like that. So how do we overcome this tendency? How do we overcome that tendency? It is only possible through suitable spiritual practice, which is devotional service. Of course, we repent, we serve the Vaishnava, and we continue to do devotional service. Devotional service is the most important. See, there are so many subtle impressions in our mind that we have carried on through so many births because of the different plans that we have been making. So at this point in time, it has to be cleansed. All these layers have to be cleansed, and it is possible only through devotional service. So actually, it is so interesting how, as we purify ourselves and we advance, the offensive mentality or this competition on a bodily platform gradually reduces. It reduces. All of us, we can see it in our own lives, how after taking to devotional service, your character is transformed to a great extent. If our character is not transformed to a great extent, then we are not doing our devotional service properly. That's what it means. That's what at least everyone has told us. So it's our own check. We can do self introspection and we can see if we are really changing for good, then yes, we are doing our sadhana properly. So like this, slowly, the subtle coverings or these impressions can be removed and we can purify ourselves. So then, have we seen any such advanced devotees who have not been on the slightest bodily platform? Yes, we have, because we are in such a wonderful sampradaya where we have living saints walking amidst us. And I really wanted to speak a little bit about this incident with Indradyumna Maharaj and Bhakticharu Maharaj. You must have all seen that video. It was so beautiful, such a beautiful interaction between the two of them. Such great saints. Indradyumna Maharaj, he gives this testimony in one of his videos very recently, which came out after the disappearance of Bhakticharu Swami Maharaj. He said that in 1980s, BP Puri Maharaj wanted to pass on a mantra to a sannyasi in ISKCON, because it was a tradition that if one received a secret mantra, they would pass it on to someone in the next generation. Puri Maharaj wanted someone in ISKCON to actually have the mantra. And when this, he did, when Bhakticharu Maharaj got to know about this, he could have very well asked, he could have very well taken the mantra from Puri Maharaj when Puri Maharaj gave him this information. But however, Bhakticharu Maharaj, he asked Indradyumna Maharaj if he would like to be initiated in that mantra. And when Indradyumna Maharaj asked Bhakticharu Maharaj, why don't you take it? It's such a wonderful opportunity. It's a Narasimha mantra that is coming down in Parampara. And Puri Maharaj had received it from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, and he had received it from Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who had directly received it from Lord Narasimha Dev. It was a secret mantra. So Indradyumna Maharaj told Bhakticharu Maharaj, why don't you take it? It's such a great opportunity. But then Bhakticharu Maharaj, in all his humility, he said, but I thought of you first. I thought you'll be the best person. So this is friendship and this is real love. And this is actually not functioning on a bodily platform, because that mantra, as it was told by Puri Maharaj, was that if one chants that mantra, one can be protected even from death. And Indradyumna Maharaj says that in so many ways, in all his situations, he had seen the mantra working like that. So this is really not functioning on a bodily platform and functioning out of spiritual love for one's God brothers. So great saints have shown this by example. They have shown this by example. And we can understand how relationships in a spiritual platform work. There is no tinge of bodily identification. So we can see such personalities, positive personalities, and take inspiration from them. Yes, it is very difficult to get rid of bodily identifications, and no one is an exception. Nobody is an exception. But when we see such exalted personalities who have perfected their sadhana and who can have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thoughts for showing appreciation to one's own God brothers and having this real love, real Vaishnava culture, we can all be inspired to follow in their footsteps. Of course, we can't imitate. We are no one to imitate, but at least we can take inspiration to follow in the footsteps of such great Vaishnavas. So this mentality to be attached to a certain plan in life. We have so many plans on a bodily platform. So this mentality to be attached to a certain plan takes us from one plan to the other. Because we have one plan, to fulfill that plan, we make 10 other plans. Now, to fulfill those 10 plans, we make 20 other plans. So this plan takes us from one plan to the other. Plan square, plan to the power of 4, it goes on and on. And if all our plans are not fulfilled at the time of our death, Prabhupada writes in the purport, right? He writes about a man who had these plans, and he somehow asked the doctor to extend his life so that he could fulfill his plans. But in the effort of trying to fulfill his plans, he's going to have 20 other plans, and then he has to carry it on to his next birth, and then keep on fulfilling, like what we saw with Amba. So this mentality to create plan takes us from one plan to another plan, and this mentality that I have not fulfilled my plan takes me on to my next birth, and it continues on and on and on, and it's a loop, and this puts us in this bodily concept of life. So this is the role of the mind and the subtle body. Now, what is the role of the super soul in this process? That is also described in this verse and in the purport. Prabhupada in the purport, he says, in the next birth, one acquires remembrance from the super soul and begins to execute the plans begun in his previous life. So the super soul is responsible for helping us remember and then taking it up and facilitating everything. So he is the permitter and the sanctioner, right? Sanctioner and observer of all that we are doing. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. To Arjuna, he's directing. What is he doing? He's directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a machine made up of material energy, 1861, situated on the vehicle given by material nature and reminded by the super soul within the heart. The living entity struggles all over the universe, trying to fulfill his plans, thinking, I am Brahmana, I am Kshatriya, I, me, mine, this is what I am, this is what I am, everything based on bodily identification. I am American, I am Indian, and so on. And all these designations are of the same essence, Prabhupada writes. What's the same essence? Bodily identification is the same essence. So this pointless wandering is described in another story. We have so many stories today. But it's nice to start a day with stories where we get inspired seeing great Vaishnavas and also other great personalities who can teach us by their example. So there is another very interesting story from the Gita Mahatmya. This is from Gita Mahatmya, 7th chapter. Gita Mahatmya has beautiful stories. Every chapter of Bhagavad Gita has a particular story of what happened with a few people and how they got delivered hearing the Bhagavad Gita. And there are so many lessons in each of these stories that we can all imbibe from. So this is from the 7th chapter of the Gita Mahatmya story, interesting story. There was a town by the name Patalipura, where there was a Brahmin by the name Shankukarna. And this Shankukarna, he was a businessman and he had amassed a great amount of wealth. And however, he had never performed any sort of devotional activities, and he did not even perform the ritualistic performances for his forefathers. Okay, so basically, he was just engrossed in business. He was not worried about devotional service or even ritualistic activities. He was not worried about pious activities. He was not worried about his duties, nothing. All that he wanted to do was amass wealth over and over. He didn't do his duties towards his forefathers or towards the demigods or toward Krishna or anybody for that matter. So all that he was doing was amassing wealth. And he had become extremely rich, and so much so that he had so much influence with rich. When one becomes extremely wealthy, one becomes very powerful and he attracts attention from everyone. So all the influential people, they would go and they would dine with the Shankukarna and they would have his association. And he was like any person in Kali Yuga pretty much. So that's what we all do. So he was very influential and he had a lot of power and a lot of say in the society, and everyone was his fan. And he was engrossed in his riches. Now, Shankukarna, though he had so much wealth, he was extremely miserly. He never gave his wealth to anyone. He was very attached to his wealth, and he had all his wealth buried underground so that no one could see it. Now, It so happened that in that time, of course, this is not modern day Kali Yoga, at some point you can imagine, where multiple marriages was quite rampant. The Shankukarna wanted to get married again, and it was his fourth marriage ceremony. So he already had children from his previous wives, but still he wanted to get married again. And he was going for his marriage ceremony. At that time, he had to go through a forest, and in the night, they rested in that forest. At that time, a snake came and it bit Shankukarna. And they immediately, as soon as the snake bit him, all his relatives panicked, and they called the doctors and different mantra chanters to come and relieve him of the snake bite, but no one was able to help Shankukarna, and he shortly died. Now, after he died, what was happening at the time of death? At the time of death, he was constantly thinking of his wealth that he had buried underground in his garden. He was constantly thinking of this, and he attained, it is mentioned that he attained the a preta sarpa. That means a snake ghost. Okay, he attained the body, subtle body of a snake ghost. So there he was as a preta sarpa, and he took residence of this place where his wealth was buried. So he went and he started guarding that place because of the subtle impressions that he had from his past birth. So the same attachment, my wealth is there, my wealth is there, I should be there. So he was born there and he was guarding that place. And this was going on for a long time because he was so attached to his wealth, and he had not revealed it to anybody. Nobody knew that the wealth was actually buried in that place, in that garden. Nobody knew. But he was so fearful that somebody will take away his wealth. So he continued. The impressions continued, and he was right there making plans. In previous birth, he had plans. Those plans continued, and he was there. And then after some time, he himself was fed up of being in that snake ghost body. So therefore, he appeared in the dream of some of his sons, and he told them that I am currently stuck in this body here. I am a preta sarpa, and I am in this place where a lot of wealth is buried. So he reveals the secret after a point in time. And then since he has revealed the secret, the sons wake up and they're also excited because they're going to find wealth. So they go around digging this entire garden. And finally, they come to this place where there is a huge snake hill. I mean, the house of a snake, like you see that anthill kind of a thing, where snakes actually have their residence. So they come to that place and they start destroying it and they start digging. So at that time, the Sarpa shows up. He just shows up and he starts speaking to the sons. And the sons are like, "Who are you? Who are you? Why have you come here?" And then he says, "No, I'm your father. I'm your father in this body." But then this son, the eldest son by the name Lord Shiva, he says, "Oh, I have seen you in my dream in the previous night, and I saw that there is a lot of treasure buried in this place, so I've come to take them." Now, when this eldest son by the name Shiva was speaking like this, the Preta Sarp started to laugh. He just started laughing and he said, "What are you trying to do, my son? You're repeating the same mistake that I did. I did this mistake. I was so attached. I was so attached to my wealth, and I continuously thought of my wealth. I never performed any rituals to free my forefathers from hellish condition. And you are also doing the same mistake. You are after this wealth. You're not worried about me. First, do the necessary rituals that is needed for me to release me from this body, and don't get entangled by like me. Learn from me. Please learn the lesson from me. Don't be entangled to this wealth. This wealth is not taking you anywhere. Again, next birth, you will also become a similar snake and you'll be guarding this area. So remember, do this Shraddha ceremony properly and relieve me from my condition that I am in, and then learn to be detached. Don't get so attached to wealth because it's not really helping you in any way. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Bhagavad Gita 8.6, it says, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So that is what has happened to this Shankukarna. So, and it's interesting because this is Gita Mahatmya. At this point in time, this son, Shiva, he asks his father, So what's the process of delivering you from this situation? Then he tells you perform the Shraddha ceremony, and on that day you invite the Brahmanas, you feed them nicely, and you recite the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. When you recite the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I will hear it and I will be released from this situation. So thereafter, this Shiva, along with all his brothers, he fulfilled the instructions of his father, and his father was released from that body, and he attained a four-armed form, Sarupya Mukti, and he went back to Vaikuntha. And later, the sons also, since they took the instruction of their father so seriously, they were also fixed in devotion, and they used to chant the 7th chapter very regularly, and they did nice pious activities. At the same time, they were engaged completely in devotional service, and they also perfected their life. They attained the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So like this, we see that impressions, yes, they are carried on, and one should learn to snap out from the cycle. Just cut off, don't keep doing it over and over. Learn from the sons of Shankukarna that ultimately we have to do what we have to do. What do we have to do? We have to do devotional service and cleanse ourselves of all these coverings that we have been having. One more quick story. This is, of course, Prabhupada story on worldly attachment, the story of Kailash. Very famous, everyone knows the story. So I'll keep it short, but then it is important to remind ourselves. So I'll keep it short. It's a very similar story of a man taking the birth of a snake and then taking the birth of a dog and so on. So there was this man by the name Kailash who was very attached to his home and his property. And one day, Sage Narada comes to see him. And he tells, Narada goes to Kailash and he tells him, Kailash, come with me, I'm going to Vaikuntha, so you can also come along with me. But Kailash, because of his attachments, Kailash's story is actually everyone's story. Everyone is attached. We are all attached. So his story is very similar to ours, what we are doing, birth after birth. So Kailash said, sorry, sir, my children are young and I have to take care of them maybe later, because that is the duty of young parents, right? So he said, no, I'm not going to come to Vaikuntha. Then several years later, again, Narada Muni went to him and asked him, Kailash, now are you ready? Your sons are all grown up, so let's go. And Kailash says, no, I have my grandchildren. I have to worry about them. They need my guidance. My sons are not competent enough to raise their children. I have to be there for guidance. I have to save for the future generations. I'm not coming. Then again, Narada came after many years and he got to know that Kailash had actually passed away. And he also noticed, after Kailash had passed away, he noticed a dog that was continuously barking in the doorway. And then he went to the dog and the dog started speaking. He told Narada, I'm Kailash here. So Narada Muni was surprised and he said, oh, what happened to you? You have become a dog now. I called you a long time back and you didn't come. And what are you doing here now in this dog's body? Even now it's not too late. I'll take you back to Godhead. Come, I will take you. Let's go now at least, now that you got a dog's body. But then even in the dog's body, he said, I have so much wealth that I've acquired and my sons are so careless. They don't know how to guard this wealth. I have to guard the wealth from thieves. So therefore, I am in this dog body busy guarding this house and this wealth so that the thieves don't come and take away my wealth. And then Narada Muni goes away. And after many years, Narada Muni learned that the dog had died. So he thought, okay, Kailash, somehow I should take him back. And when Narada Muni came, he saw a snake. And that snake said, I am Kailash here. And Narada asked, why can't you come with me? What are you doing now? Don't you think it's too late? Come on, let's go. You now have a snake's body. Now at least you come. And the snake said, no, I'm happy that my sons have put all their money in a bank, but they are so lazy that they wake up very late in the morning. And by then, all the grains in the rice field are destroyed either by elephants or stolen by neighbors. Therefore, I've come as a snake to guard the field and protect the grains. So I'm very busy. Sorry, I cannot come with you. So this was our situation. So we go on doing this with our impressions. We are carrying it from birth to birth. Shariram yadavapnoti yachapi uttramati grihitvaitani samyati vayur gandhani vashiyat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions from one life from one body to another, just as how air carries aromas. 15.8 Bhagavad Gita. Krishna also tells the same thing. So many impressions, we just carry it from one birth to the other. It's so hard to give up. So anyway, seeing this condition of Kailash, Narada Muni, finally what he did was he clapped his hands very loudly, and then he called all the sons of Kailash and he showed him that there was a large snake in the field. Immediately, the sons started beating up the snake, and Kailash, in a snake bird, he was trying to hiss and tell his sons that he's Kailash, I'm your father, don't hit me. But then the more the snake hissed, the more he got beaten up. And then finally, the snake remembered Narada and Narada's instructions. And in his next life, he became a devotee of Lord Krishna by the grace of Narada Muni. So in our life, we definitely need devotee association. Devotee association becomes very important for us to remind us of the situation constantly. So a person is constantly impelled to accept one body after the other according to his desires and action. And such a person who's so attached to his plan making and all this business, he spends all his time in bodily consciousness, and he continuously goes through the cycle of birth and death until by the mercy of a devotee, he's finally reinstated in the path of devotional service. Prabhupada quotes a verse from Bhagavatam very often. Yes, Yasyatma Buddhi Kunapetri Dhatuke. This is 1084:13. It says, one who identifies his self as the inert body composed of mucus, bile, and air, who assumes his wife and family are permanently his own, who thinks an earthen image or the land of his birth as worshipable, or who sees a place of pilgrimage as merely the water there, but who never identifies himself with or feels kinship or worships or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth, such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. Sayeva Gokaraha, very famous. Prabhupada often quotes this verse. So therefore, we must learn to absorb our mind in Krishna consciousness. We must plan. Yes, we must plan, but we must plan to do what? We must plan to be a devotee, and we should understand that we are not this body, but we are spirit soul. And great devotees, that's why they always hanker for the association of devotees life after life, so that they are reminded of Krishna. We see this characteristic of all great devotees and all their prayers. When they see the Lord face to face, they ask only for one thing. Or when they see devotees, they ask only for one thing. Let me always be a devotee. It doesn't matter where I take birth, how I take birth. I should never forget Krishna, and I should constantly have devotee association. This is what everyone prays. Parikshit has prayed the same thing. We see the Prachetas pray for the same thing. Prahalad prays for the same thing. Sudhama, the flower seller in Krishna's pastime, when he enters Mathura, he also asks for the same thing. Everyone asks for the same thing. So bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yes chasmi tatvatah tato mam tatvato jnatva vishate tad anantaram. 1855. Krishna says, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. There is no other way. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can attain the kingdom of God. Antakali chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram yat prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering of me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this, there is no doubt. So the only way to really forego this concept of I and mine is to constantly engage the mind in the lotus feet of the Lord, which means constant devotional service and meditation of the Lord. And that's why we see great Vaishnavas like Haridas Thakur and others, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. What do they pray for? They pray for somehow or the other, let me just get association of a Vaishnava. Even if I have to take birth as an insect or a dog, it is okay. Let me be born in a Vaishnava home. So that they can get this association, they can guard their consciousness and forget this bodily identifications and have this constant spiritual consciousness and develop their sadhana. So in Bhagavatam, we see great personalities like, all these personalities who have offered prayers. Almost everybody have a similar prayer. They all ask for this again and again. And I think that is the whole purpose of our Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. What do we do here? We are just, hankering for association so that we can keep our consciousness. We can, this whole Sangha has to facilitate our consciousness to keep it intact in the mood of Shravanam Kirtanam, so that we can constantly hear and chant and protect our consciousness and get rid of these impressions that we have been carrying on again and again, birth after birth. So this is the only way. So we have to be careful about what plans we make, what sort of things that fill our mind. And because we should understand, mind plays a pivotal role in shaping our next life. So that is what this verse says. I'd like to stop here. Of course, there are so many other stories that can be told, but we'll stop here and let's see if anyone has any questions or comments or any realizations you want to share regarding this. Thank you so much for your attention and association, and sorry for going over time. So, Hare Krishna Mataji and Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Preethi, Vilasini, Mataji, very, very, very wonderful. You put everything together in one package and deliver. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank
This
you
is
so much.
Kamodaki Das.
Kamodaki Mataji, thank you so much for your association and blessings. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Preethi, Vilasini, Bhakti, Koti Koti Dandat Pranam. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, you covered so many points. And one thing it touched to heart about that Narad Muni and that story we hear so many times, but still we like a Hiranyaks and Hiranyakashipu sitting in our heart. And when we are cleaning in our garden, the weeds is cover every month. So every month we have to clean that weeds. So that hearing same and same stories, Sri Bhagavatam, the rasa is coming more and more and more, and Vaishnava association is more important. And also we don't do a Vaishnava aparat, otherwise it's coming in next month. So nicely explained. Hari Hari Gauranga, Koti Koti Dandat Pranam to your sincere seva. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji. Thank you, Mataji, for your association and presence on the calls and always blessing everybody. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Preethi Vilasini Mataji. It's so good to see you giving class again. I just wanted to thank you for such an amazing class, for bringing together so many different pastimes and reinforcing for all of us about how how we need to how I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, I'm having a mental block. It's how the false ego and the mind and intelligence, the subtle body, travel with us throughout lifetime and lifetime. And that's what we really need to work on, is changing our consciousness so that we don't continue to take these impressions with us and continue making the same mistakes lifetime after lifetime. So thank you so very much for the beautiful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Tiffany Mataji, for your kind words and association. You always uplift our spirits. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for the beautiful class, Mataji. Really insisting with so many stories and so many time and again throughout the class, that how our actions that we take in this with this body will, we have to pay for it in the next God knows how many birth. But thank you for telling it again and again. I hope it remains with me at least for some days so that I can meditate on it. And thank you again. It's a beautiful, beautiful class. Can't express in words though. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Anuradha Mataji. Thank you for your association. Thank you for always being on all the calls. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Preethi Vilasini Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Sadhguru Srila Prabhupada. Very, very beautiful class. It reminds me of your Brihad Bhagavatham classes. Everybody tells you that you are a grandmother telling stories. Such a beautiful class, and with so many different pastimes and so much lessons to learn. And as Anuradha Mataji was saying, that now it's up to us that how we imbibe those lessons from those stories in our life and cultivate this thing that we should not be attached to our material assets and get attached to our spiritual assets. So thank you for reminding all of us for that.
Me too. Yeah, I definitely, the whole class is like telling myself. So
And that's your humility, Mataji. But yeah, definitely the class was really, really very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Krishna Sundari Mataji, for being there for us. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Mataji, I have one question.
Yes, Prabhu.
It's really a great class, and again, I like to hear the recording again because so much of past stories and Kailas and all those is so much favorite. So I like to bring one story, Mataji, happened few years back. I was driving car coming home, and my car color was red, and a bird came right in front of the car. It was sunset, little dark, and got hit, came right in front of my car, got hit and fell down. I felt very bad. And then by the time I make the U-turn, come back to see that bird, and it was smashed by car behind me and died. So I felt very bad, regretting, and I talked to Prabhuji's lot. I said, yeah, this kind of thing happens. So I cannot make myself, ease like and any peace. I always feeling. So what I did, I bought a bird feeder behind my backyard, and I started feeding these birds every day regularly. Then I asked a question in the program like this: many Maharajas, sometime anybody comes up, how should I offer this seed to Krishna and feed this bird? And they said, yes, is there a way? Because I don't know, and Maharaj and Prabhuji said that, yes, you can offer it with little salt to Krishna and feed the bird. I started doing that, and a lot of same kind of bird comes, but still I have that regret feeling all the time that a bird got killed by my car or hit, whether my mistake or whatever, I don't know, but that feeling always there, and it bothers me a lot, whenever I recall that moment, and it happens to me. So any kind of you have anything to feedback on these, or what should I do, anything else, or anything would be highly appreciated. Just asking.
Yeah. So very nice, Prabhu, question. Situation, yes, we all go through similar situations. I remember once, I mean, you're talking about a bird. I remember a cockroach that had come into the house, and it was quite a big one in Houston several years ago. And I wanted to pick and leave it out, but then I was there, and a couple of others were there at home. And the situation turned out that the person with me ended up smashing the cockroach, but I feel very guilty for that. I mean, yes, situations where we have killed, done pest control, no thing, but especially that one incident I'm not able to take off my head, because it was literally smashed, and it was very cruel, I felt at that time, and it's very hard for me to get over it. I feel guilty even to this day, especially for that one. Not that I've not killed before, but it has happened several times, but I felt that was cruel. So anyway, the idea is that it is mentioned that when we do, this is scripturally, it is mentioned that we do 5 kinds of yajna, Panchabhuta yajna. For all living entities is also one yajna that we do, that is feeding other living entities. Why do we have to do that? Again, in scripture, it is mentioned that we are continuously killing different kinds of living entities. Wherever there are places of fire, like places of cooking, or in so many other places, when we are walking on the road or when we are driving, we are actually killing so many living entities. There are so many ants and so many crawling creatures. Everything is being killed on a regular basis by us. And what is the solution to that? Scripture says actually feeding them, feeding similar living entities. That's why, that is what is the recommended method. So whatever you're doing now is actually the perfect method as an atonement. And recently also I heard from another devotee that Jayapataka Maharaj was giving a class, and there he mentioned that there was, or rather he was addressing not a class, but rather he was addressing some devotees. And there was accidentally one person did end up eating cow's meat. So then what is the solution to it? She didn't know about it, of course. It was not that she intentionally ate it, like your case. It's not that you intentionally drove on that bird. It was an accident. You don't know what sort of karma or what was happening in the past life. It just came, it fell down, it died, and you were a part of it. You were responsible, not consciously, but it just happened as an accident. So similarly, it so happened that this girl, by mistake, it has just gone, and they realized it later. So the atonement was to go and take care of cows and feed cows. So you see, the atonement is kind of simple, meaning you have to serve those kind of living entities, feed them, take care of them, and that will take care of it. At the same time, we just don't want pious karma, right? Because we have heard so much philosophy, and still if we are after, canceling one bad karma with one, I mean, of course, karma doesn't get cancelled, but the idea is I do one pious karma to counteract another sin. That is not our philosophy. Our philosophy is to dovetail everything to Krishna consciousness. So the methodology is perfect. Offer it to Krishna, pray to Krishna, because ultimately Krishna is in everyone's heart, and he understands our repent as well. So he will help us, and just offer those seeds to those birds, and definitely whatever has been done, Krishna will take care. So it is at the end of the day, Prabhu, I can understand this pain is very hard to remove. It takes many years to erase that image out of our heart. But if we can really surrender to Krishna and tell Krishna that it was completely unintentional, please take care of this, definitely Krishna will take care. You see the story of Mrigari, how many animals were killed by Mrigari. But after he took the devotional service, I mean, Krishna takes care of everything. Devotees and Krishna are very merciful.
So great. Thank you very much, Mataji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I have a question on that, Mataji.
Yes.
Yesterday I was reading Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 41, and in that Prabhupada is saying that, the devotees of Lord Krishna, they do not get entangled in karma. So karma, both pious or impious activities. So whether a devotee is doing something, I mean, that does not mean that we take that for granted and go on killing or doing the wrong things. But if it happens so, we do not get entangled even in the bad things, because devotees are on the platform of Shuddha Tattva, and they are like higher than the even mode of goodness. So Mataji, how does this two reconcile? Because that's what Prabhupada says, and I've read it somewhere else too in the scripture.
Yes, Mataji, that's correct. So since devotees are in the platform of Shuddha Sattva, the active action of the devotee is also in the platform of Shuddha Sattva, right? So that's the reason we just don't continue to do just pious karma, pious activity. So yes, there is a mistake that is being done, we may not be responsible, but still it has happened in front of our eyes. So as a Vaishnava, as a Paradukha Dukhi, you pray to Krishna, take those remnants of Krishna Prasadam and feed all these living entities, so that everyone is satisfied. So Bhuta Yajna, or doing Yajna for other living entities in the service of Krishna, is always transcendental. So it doesn't account to any sort of pious karma. And I think the other part of the question was, since he's a devotee, he's not even implicated for it, right? That's what you're trying to say. Yes, he's not implicated, but there is this sort of a guilt feeling that is there in the heart. That's the nature of a Vaishnava. They just feel very sad for that living entity. So they can always serve other living entities in the service of Krishna. Instead of taking it that they are doing it, they should do it in the service of Krishna, so that it's pleasing to Krishna. Krishna is happy when all his devotees are served, right? So we can do that if the guilt
beautiful continues. Thank you so much, Mataji. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha Mataji, for that add-on. That was very, very, very nice. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandot Pranama, Srila Prabhupada. Very, very beautiful class, Mataji.
Thank you, Shama Gauri Mataji, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Very nice stories, Mataji. Wow. Wonderful. So Mataji, I have question. Like Dhruva Maharaj was Brahmana in his previous life, but he was continuously meditating on the opulence of the king. So he also born in a royal family.
Mm.
But how come he got the devotional service then? Means what was his activities in previous life that he got the darshan of the Lord in this life?
So yes, definitely Brahmana family, there is some amount of piety in the activities. It is easy for such a person to take up devotional service in the next life. But the chief cause of Dhruva's devotional service is the association of his mother, the instruction of his mother, and the personal association of Narada Muni, who saw the determination. So it was ultimately, the credit goes to Narada and Suniti. So much so that when he was going back to Godhead, he took his mother along with him, and she was eligible to go along with him because she had the right consciousness. So definitely devotee association, Mataji. If there is a little faith, Adal Shraddha, you take devotee association to the Sadhu Sangha, right? So devotee association is everything, and that's how in all these stories that we saw, it was ultimately either through Narada Muni or some devotee that the next person was delivered. Yes.
Yeah, yes, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bhakti Sangha is the blessings for us.
Yes, it is ultimately Bhakti Sangha for us. Yes, definitely.
Devotee appreciation every day. Yes.
So that's what I was also going to say. The Bhakti Sangha is doing that work. Thank you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Kamudaki.
Hare Krishna, Preethi, Vilasini, Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Very, very beautiful, beautiful class, Mataji, with the nice stories. And I really like that snake. He's getting so many bodies, right? Snake body and everybody. And like he still don't want it to go. And we have that story also, right? Indra becoming a hog, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah,
Indra becoming a hog. You're right. Yeah.
yeah. How Indra was like telling, oh no,
Attached. Yeah.
attached. I don't want to come now. Yeah, that story also. I remember when you are telling so many stories. It's very nice, Mataji. That's our life. We always gives the reasons. I always we so many times we saw in WhatsApp circulating that when do you read Bhagavad Gita? That circulation of that poster, I remember when you're telling all the stories, like the small boy girl says, okay, this is a small boy, and then school, and then college, and then lover, marriage, children, too old, then no time to read, you'll die, that's it. So this is what our life, Mataji. We always give the reasons, and that interesting point is like we should not try to have these desires. If you have a desire, then we need to take a next body and satisfy that desire. Like Amba story we saw, it's very, very nice, Mataji. Very beautiful class. I don't know how my desires will go away, Mataji. I'm scared only after hearing this. So many desires, Mataji. I don't know how to control those desires and how to get out of that. I'm so scared. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. That's true. I mean, even for me, I feel the same. Yes.
Thank you, Mataji, for beautiful early morning class. It was very nice. Well, whatever class you take, it is just like a katha only. Either CC class or either a Brihad Bhagavatam, Amrita, either Bhagavatam. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't give any change. It's like always a story. It is, hard topic is converted very easily, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinita Mataji, for all your services and your association. Thank you. Thank you for everything, Mataji. I see something on the chat. Okay. Is it okay to do pest control done at home, especially in the kitchen? Because I have to prepare bhoga offering to Radha Madan Mohan. Will there be any sinful reaction to it? A difficult question. Ultimately, we do pest control, but the Prabhupada says it's better not to come to that situation where we have to do it. Prevention is better than cure, so it's better to take care in such. I know, but if you're living in apartments, it's not your fault. Sometimes because of the neighbors and because of the bad old constructions, it just spreads everywhere. Pests spread everywhere. But definitely Prabhupada has said this in various ways. He says that it's better to not come to a position or a condition where you have to end up doing pest control. You can try to prevent. But I know personally that under certain circumstances, we have no other choice. Like even in temples, sometimes it happens that there is no other way but to do it. So if we have to do it, we have to do it. But then will I get sinful reaction? Yes, definitely you will get sinful reactions. That's how it works. But still, we can continue to pray to Krishna and do our services nicely to Krishna. And don't worry too much about it. Or don't try to, kind of repeat the situation where you have to keep doing pest control over and over. Sometimes in life, certain things happen beyond our control. Not everything can be controlled in our life. Sometimes it happens, yes, but at least we can take care it doesn't happen again, and continue to pray for all living entities. Krishna will definitely take care of them. Just do that, Mataji. I mean, we don't have a straightforward answer. Sometimes it's very hard. Sinful reactions we can't control. If it comes, it comes. That's all.
Hare Krishna Mataji, we are staying here from last 10 years
Mm.
and haven't done pest control.
Mm.
So, but a lot of spiders and
Yeah.
small insects, they come inside.
That
And
we can pick and throw outside.
yeah, so we just peek and throw, but still, while sweeping or something, some spiders, small insects, they die. We cannot control that, but we haven't done pest control yet.
Mm.
So we are thinking we at the time of selling the house, then only we will do that because we cannot stop that. Otherwise, nobody will buy the house again.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also like when they do take up homes, that even in rental homes also they do it before giving it to the next party. So it's a that's what they do, and we can't control, we can't micromanage certain things.
Yeah. So we have to living in this country, so we have to compromise some.
Compromise. Yes. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Someone said something.
I think it's Lalitangi Mataji.
Lalitangi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Anjana Mataji. Hari Bol, Anjana Mataji.
Hare Bol Mataji. Thank you so much for the nice class, especially so many stories, Mataji, to make us remember how we should be careful, not offend to the devotees, and then not attach in the material things. But yeah, it's very hard to come out from this situation. I just remember one post by His Grace Vaishishka Prabhu was posting in the Facebook. I was reading, I was reminding. He was telling, he gave the example of his how his parents they used to clean the whole house when they go to the vacation. When they used to go to the vacation, and then before going vacation, they used to clean very nicely so that when they come back they can stay in nice house. They can enter in the nice house like that. In this lifetime, if we clean all our sinful desire or whatever attachment, when we come in the next life, we can come in the nice body. Means that supper body will be very nice. Means we
Wow.
can nice properly practice a special life. That was I was reminding that post, Mataji, while you were telling.
Wow, very nice. Thank you.
Hello.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay. So, Mataji, should we end?
Hare Krishna, Preethi, Vilasini, Mataji. Thank you so much
Thank
for such a beautiful class, Mataji. So many stories and wonderful answers to all of the questions, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Indu Mataji. Thank you so much.
Mataji, Lalitangi Mataji left a message here in
Yeah,
the chat.
I saw it. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for the beautiful class, and we will look forward for your regular classes going forward. And yeah, will pay obeisances to Mataji and all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavindaki
की जय,
jai.
श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, और हरे कृष्ण।